Hi, I'm Dave Hilowitz. So late last year, Apple introduced a whole bunch of new Macs, and the big deal about them is that they were based on Apple's own chips, the M1 ARM chips. As a software developer, I immediately picked one up so I could basically see if my software still ran fine. And since then, for like maybe 7 months now, I've been using my M1 MacBook Pro as my primary music computer. So I figured I'd make a video about that and just share what my experience has been, because I know a lot of people are trying to figure out, like, should they upgrade? Are there compatibility issues? So yeah, let's check it out. So first, top level impressions. It is blazingly fast. My Intel MacBook Pro was from 2016, and this anecdotally feels about 3 times faster. It's really like a substantial improvement. Also, because these chips run so much cooler, I almost never hear the fan, which is a welcome improvement from my 2016 laptop, which, you know, if I was doing like substantial music production, I could always hear the fan going. And this is especially annoying when you're like recording a sample or something and you can hear the fan and you know you're going to have to do like a ton of noise reduction just to get rid of the sound of the computer. So you heard me say that it feels about 3 times faster. That speed, it varies depending on the piece of software I'm using. So let's talk a little bit about that. M1 is a completely new kind of chip, and what that means is that in order to fully take advantage of the hardware, software manufacturers actually have to recompile their apps and specifically target this new processor. Not all of the manufacturers have done that yet. Most pieces of software that existed prior to these new chips were compiled for Intel chips. Of course, this new machine will still run all of that software, but it does it with an extra added layer called Rosetta. And Rosetta is basically like a translator that takes all of the machine language calls that are made for those Intel chips, and it converts them over to the ARM machine language calls. Of course, adding a layer between the software and the CPU makes the programs a little bit less efficient than they otherwise would be. So yeah, you're getting this huge increase in performance from the new M1 chip, but you're taking away some of that performance gain by introducing this Rosetta layer. Now, as a user, you don't have to worry about any of this. You just double-click the app and you start it up. And I have yet to actually run into anything that won't run on the M1 Mac. So that's the good news. But it's useful for you to know, nonetheless, because software that has been updated to run on M1 will run really, really fast, whereas software that hasn't will just run pretty fast. Adobe Premiere has been updated for the M1, and I will say that there's no chance of me ever going back to the Intel version. It's just such a difference. Also, all of the Apple apps, Logic, GarageBand, that sort of thing. Reaper has a beta version that's M1. All of those run just blazingly fast. That being said, the DAW that I use most in day-to-day music production is Ableton Live 11. Ableton Live 11 has not been updated yet. They're still releasing versions that are compiled against Intel only. It's not a huge deal breaker or anything. I still use it, but I do feel like the CPU meter is a little bit higher than it should be for the amount of tracks I'm using. Check it out. This is my old 2016 laptop. I've got this loop, and you can see where the CPU meter is at. And this is the new M1 running the Intel version of Ableton Live. You see, the CPU usage is substantially higher. Yeah, I'm definitely waiting for that native M1 version. So your decision about whether or not to upgrade to an M1 Mac right now may have to do with actually what DAW you use. If it's been updated, then yeah, go for it. Another consideration is, of course, hardware. Before you buy a new machine, you should definitely make sure that whatever audio interface or outboard hardware that you use is compatible with M1 Macs. I use a Universal Audio Apollo Twin Duo and a Focusrite Scarlett 1820. Both of those work wonderfully on the M1, but yeah, those are the only ones I have experience with. Yet another consideration here is Windows. So Apple still sells Intel Macs. You could like go onto the Apple Store website and order an Intel Mac, the old models, and yeah, they'll ship them to you. They'll take your money. The thing is, Apple's kind of a premium hardware company, and that's both a positive and negative thing. The negative side of that is that they tend to be pretty brutal with updates. In the Windows world, you can expect a new version of Windows to work fine on a computer that's like 7 years old, 10 years old. Not so in the Apple world. Historically, they've had no trouble making their old products obsolete. Intel Macs, of course, work really well right now. They're tried and true. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if 4 years down the line, 5 years down the line, Apple just stops releasing OS updates for the Intel platform. There's some precedent for this. In 2006, they converted from PowerPC chips over to Intel. And I think it was about 4 or 5 years later that they stopped supporting PowerPC. And a lot of people were pretty bent out of shape about it at the time. That being said, one consideration about sticking with those Intel Macs is they can actually run Windows via Boot Camp. Most people don't take advantage of that functionality, but if you're one of those people who does run Windows on your Mac Mini or whatever, you need to stick with Intel as long as you possibly can. I guess what I'm trying to say is don't buy an Intel Mac unless you absolutely need to, unless there's some specific hardware reason or you need Windows or something like that. It's just not a good long-term plan. Having said that, that leaves you with 2 options. You can buy an M1 Mac now, or you can wait. If you're a Mac user and you have to upgrade now, let's say that your machine is dead and you need to replace it, assuming that, whatever hardware you're using is compatible with it, I couldn't recommend it more. It's just so fast. But if you don't have to upgrade now, if this is just kind of like you feel like you should get a new computer soon, you may want to wait. First, not all software has been updated to run on M1s natively, and I think eventually every piece of software that's like in active development will have a native M1 version. So that's one reason to hold off. Also, Apple has promised that it's going to release the next iteration of its ARM chipset in like a few months. The M1X is what it's called, and it's supposedly much, much faster than the M1 chips even. So if you wait just a little bit longer, you may have better options available to you. Of course, nobody knows exactly how long you would have to wait, and nobody knows exactly what they're going to release. It could very well happen that we wait till January and then they release something weird that nobody actually wants to buy for some logistical reason. That's one of the risks that you're taking when you deal with a famously secretive company. Okay, I think that's it. Those are all my thoughts regarding buying an M1 for music production. If you enjoyed this video, it'd be great if you could give it a like. And if you haven't done so already, now is a great time to subscribe. I've got a bunch of videos coming. See you soon.